All right, but anyway, that's kind of what the nose looks. That's kind of what it is. And there's this thing. There is some septal cartilage actually right in here. You can't really feel it, but there is. You know, there's cartilages here, cartilage out here. Then there's a nasal bone up high. But all this is cartilage stuff. I've never stressed the term alar cartilage. I don't really know what that is. You know, never. And there's also actually some adipose tissue, connective tissue and adipose on the side of the nose. So everybody has that, and that's just part of the deal. And it's kind of showing. There's the frontal bones. The 2401 people now remember all this. We just had a test over the skull and the bones of the skull and all that kind of stuff. And so there you kind of have that right there. But anyway, internal and nasal cavity. Now this part right here, you might remember the nasal cavity. The roof is the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone. The cribriform plate, the roof of the nasal cavity. Now I'm not talking about the hard palate. I'm talking about the hard palate. Most of the hard palate, you remember from 2401, most of the hard palate is the palatine process of the maxilla. That's most of the hard palate. Then the palatine bone right at the very back. But above, if you drill through the palatine process of the maxilla, you get into the nasal cavity. Now the roof of that is the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone, which I asked that on the test sometime, on the bone test. That little cribriform, the porous area, cribriform plate of the ethmoid, and then the floor of the nasal cavity is the hard palate, which most of the hard palate is the palatine process of the maxilla, but some of the hard palate at the very back is the palatine bone. And y'all may remember that, you may or may not, you vaguely remember that from 2401. You may remember that to a certain extent. But that's just kind of the way it is. And then the septum, and again, I asked them the other day, last week, I asked them the vomer bone. Remember the vomer? We turned the skull upside down, I pin the vomer, put a little sticker on the vomer. But the nasal septum is the vomer and the perpendicular plate. Now you may know someone who's had a deviated septum. And that deviated septum, they have to go in there and do surgery, and I understand that can be, getting over that it's a little painful, so I understand. Another cousin, a brother of the dentist, he works in a bank up in Madisonville, and later he had to have some surgical work done for a deviated septum. And I remember him his nickname was Bunkin. Now don't ask me where that name came from, Bunkin. His name is William Calvin, but his nickname, everybody knows him as Bunkin, wherever that came from. But anyway, he had to have that nasal septum repaired. He's a grown guy, you know, he really went through some pain on that. It really bothered him. All right, but then the paranasal sinuses, well, empty into the frontal, the paranasal sinuses, the frontal, sphenoid, maxillary, and ethmoid are the, and I don't know what I have empty into, the paranasal sinuses. Probably they empty into the nasal cavities where they empty into the paranasal sinuses, empty into the nasal. And the only thing about, let me tell you the story behind the sinuses. They don't really have what they do, supposedly now in evolution, reduce the weight of the skull because they're little cavities. And so there's no hollow bone, there's no solid bone there. And that's one of the theories that they talk about. But now we know the sinuses from the standpoint of a sinus infection, you know, and that can be a problem there. They're called paranasal is what they're referred to. Paranasal sinuses. The frontal is right up in here. There's a sphenoid, there's a maxillary, there's an ethmoid sinus. Again, that just kind of shows you. I might have a picture of it. The nasal concha, those are things you looked at in 2401. You vaguely remember the shelves of bone? The shelves of bone on the side, the nasal concha, you know, and meati is the openings underneath that. So that's just something from most of this stuff you saw in 2401. These are adapted for warming and moistening. Was it you telling me about? Was it you we were talking about the air being real cold? If you breathe through your, and I used to notice that when I used to jog a lot. I don't, but in weather when it starts getting colder like it is now, if you breathe through, it kind of feels real cold. A real purpose for these nasal concha and the meati and everything, the nose is adapted for warming, moistening, filtering air, and also it's involved in olfaction, you know, and speech. So that's the nasal. Olfaction is smell through the cribriform plate, but you know that's just, again, this is just some fluff, just some. It's not hard stuff. It's just Makes a little sense. There's some stuff right there that's kind of showing you some of the idea right there. Showing the hard palate. There's the hard palate that y'all remember. All of you remember this right here. Most of that hard palate is the palatine process of the maxilla. Then here's the nasal concha, the shell. I never can see three. Remember they always talk about a superior, middle, and inferior? In the skulls we have, I always just see two in there. That's all I've ever really seen. I never even stressed that either. I just say there's supposed to be three of them. I've never seen three. I guess there is three. Even in real skulls, I don't see three. But they say there. Now here's the eustachian tube. Eustachian tubes, that kind of helps equalize pressure. The eustachian tube from the middle ear to the this is actually called the nasopharynx right here. The nasopharynx area back in here. We haven't talked about that yet. But here's the nasal cavity right up in here, the nasopharynx. Back in here's the oropharynx, the laryngopharynx, all that. But right in here, when I became conscious of these really one time, is doing some scuba diving training. And I hadn't been used to going down that deep with the gear, you know, and breathing with all the apparatus, you know. And I remember my ears, they started hurting, that pressure. And as I got up, I do my mouth like that to relieve some of the pressure. And that can be a problem. That can be an annoyance sometimes. Now, in children, one thing, the eustachian tubes are more parallel with the throat. It's very easy for a throat infection in a child to end up as a middle ear infection. Have you ever had a child with an earache? They let you know it, don't they? A child with an earache, you know, your mama's not going to get any sleep. You're going to have some, you know, a child with an earache, man, and they're going to cry and they're going to keep you awake. You know, they hurt. They need some attention. All right, but anyway, that's kind of, we'll come back to this. There's the Adam's apple. It's the thyroid cartilage. There's another cartilage down, cricoid cartilage. There's the trachea. This is cricoid, thyroid. We'll talk about. There's the hyoid bone, right, that supports the tongue. There's the epiglottis, which closes over. When you swallow, the epiglottis closes over the glottis, which is the opening into the trachea. You know, and that keeps us from. We all swallow wrong. All of us do that. I did that last night. I was brushing my teeth or something. I don't swallow it wrong. You know, just cough. It's most annoying, aggravating to swallow wrong for that to happen. But we all do that. Anyway, there's that. And people in otorhinolaryngology. And by the way, I'll keep you posted. This brother-in-law that I'm very fond of. He's a great guy. Again, an older person who's practicing medicine. He's having a positron emission tomography PET scan today. And he does have an issue. And that issue that he has stems from a melanoma. And the oncologist in the medical center in Indiana, they're almost positive. Let me tell you, any of you know someone who had a melanoma that got over it? Anybody knows anybody that had a melanoma, that survived a melanoma? Let me tell you, melanoma, no cancer is good. None of it's good. I've told you that many times. You know, there's the squamous cell carcinoma, the basal cell squamous cell melanoma. The horrible thing about a melanoma, let me just tell you all this. The horrible thing about a melanoma is that they cut it out. I mean, the oncologists, they cut those things out. The person can be cancer-free, and 10, 15, maybe 18 years later, they can crop up somewhere. That's the horrible thing about melanoma. If a person has had a melanoma and they survived it, they need to be checked regularly. And John was being checked regularly. He's right there in St. Luke's. That's where he works. And last weekend he had a tremendous neck ache, a headache, and the doctors in the family thought, well, you've got a pinched nerve, maybe. And then they did an MRI, and they found in the cerebellum. And so he's having a PET scan today at 9. In fact, he's already had it, and he'll know he probably knows the results of that now. He had the PET scan at 9, and I'll find out. And I found out yesterday he would know the results of that PET scan within an hour after it's over with. They'll let him know, and they'll let him know whether or not they can treat it. And they're talking about possibly where it's spread, where it's located, what it is. But it seems to have stemmed from a melanoma.